Have you ever wondered how to defeat your enemy? And most of all, have you ever wondered what were the tips and tricks, the dirtiest tricks that have been used in history to trick enemies? This is an episode entirely dedicated to that. So we are going to discuss the 10 dirtiest tricks to trick the enemy. Let's start. Number 1. The Aztec whistles of death. Some compare their sound to that of wind, others to the scream of 1,000 corpses. What is highly probable is that the death whistles used by pre-Columbian warriors between 1250 and 1380 served to terrorize the enemies before battle and accompany designated victims to human sacrifice. In war, hundreds of them had to be blown at once in the front lines to psychologically destabilize opponents. A pair of these skull-shaped whistles was also found in the hands of a man sacrificed in front of the temple of the wind god, Hectal. Perhaps these instruments induced a trance state during religious ceremonies. Number 2. Hannibal's animals. According to the Greek historian Polybius, the Carthaginian general Hannibal, in 217 before Christ, in the middle of the night, surprised the Roman army near Lake Trasimeno by hurling 2,000 oxen with burning brushwood tied to their horns. Interestingly, however, the crossing of the Alps with the elephants was not his greatest strategic success. The animals, not accustomed to the harsh temperatures and environments, perished quickly, and only few survived, but they were mostly slow and ineffective. Number 3. The sacred shields. That is, exploit your enemy's Achilles heel. The strategy was applied perfectly by the Persians against the Egyptians during the Battle of Pelusium in 525 before Christ. According to historical accounts, the Persian troops, led by Cambyses II, painted images of cats on their shields. Cats were obviously sacred, and therefore Egyptians, who were devoted to the cat goddess Bastet, did not attack the Persians or their shields. Other testimonies speak of shields with images of ibises, dogs, sheep, and other animals revered by the enemies. Other historians talk about live cats inserted into armors to avoid being attacked by enemy troops. Number 4. Suicide to terrify the enemy. The Chinese king Huzhan of the Hui Kingdom between 496 and 465 before Christ arranged rows of criminals willing to commit suicide or soldiers eager to self-decapitate in the front lines of his armies. As expected, this move destabilized the opponents and granted the king an advantage to exploit in the battle. Number 5. The cunning of Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan is very well known to have been accustomed to cheating on the actual numbers of his armies. To confuse opponents, he mounted puppets on horses and asked his soldiers to hold more torches so that at night it would be impossible for adversaries to estimate the number of his men. Number 6. The tactics of Philip II of Macedonia. During the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 before Christ, he first bored the Athenians and Thebans, forcing them to wait long under the sun. Then organized a false retreat, ordering his phalanx to withdraw gradually and managing to lure the enemy into a trap. But Philip II was not only a skilled strategist, he was also a ferocious leader. When he waged war against the Chalcidian League in Macedonia and Thrace, he completely razed the city of Stagira to the ground, as if no one had ever lived there. And then consequently the other cities surrendered voluntarily. Number 7. The English, masters of bluffing. The repertoire of tricks from the Second World War is vast. The Japanese used wooden silhouettes, the Germans camouflaged cars as armored vehicles, and the French attempted to deceive German aviators with interwoven branch caterpillars. The English even went as far as recruiting an illusionist. In 1941, engaged against the Germans in North Africa, they made the port of Alexandria in Egypt disappear. The idea was proposed by a professional magician, Jasper Mescline, who obscured the real port, while simultaneously constructing a fake one made of wood, but with the same type of lightning, in the middle of the desert. When enemy planes approached, the lights of the fake port were turned off, and the German pilots were then led to believe that they were on the real target, and they were not. Number 8. Tamerlane's strategy of terror. Tamerlane was the great spiritual and political leader after Genghis Khan, and attempted a century and a half later to reconstitute the unity of the Mongol Empire. Like his predecessor, he kept alive the fear he instilled in enemies and subjected populations, often resorting to gruesome acts. This is what happened in 1387 during his attempt to expand westward. After taking the city of Hishifan, Tamerlane had 70,000 severed heads of his inhabitants piled up. But to impress the enemy, he also resorted to less bloody tricks. When in numerical inferiority, he multiplied the fires of his men and tied bushes to the tail of horses to raise more dust. Number 9. Dracula's long apprenticeship. Vlad III of Wallachia, known in Romanian as Vlad the Impaler, has gone down in history for his habit of impaling enemies. That was his preferred method of execution. But above all, it was a powerful psychological stratagem to instill terror in enemies and opponents. It is said that he learned this method during his youth, spent largely as a hostage in the hands of the Ottomans. Number 10. Last one. The 36 Stratagems. This Chinese treatise on war, of uncertain date and attribution, perhaps from the Ming Dynasty era, or perhaps begun in 400 BC, lays out tactical proverbs for the aspiring warrior to deceive the opponent in more or less favorable war situations. It contains advice, often devious, such as striking the enemy in their affections or pushing them into treacherous terrain, and only then cutting off any escape route.